And welcome, everybody, one and all, to the PCS Spring Playoffs 2022. We are getting right down to the wire here, and as we have already found one of our grand finalists, we are about to find out another after a couple series, not just tonight. There's another one to go. We'll get into that, but we have a few more here, and this one is big because it is the JT Multiverse taken to the stage. Two teams enter, and only one will leave and get to go on ahead to face PSG Talent tomorrow. Hey everybody, I'm Pyrotechnics, and I'm joined by Nightstar on the broadcast tonight. And of course, our sponsors, once again, for the Spring Split, I do want to give them a shout out. CTBC Bank, and of course, Caliber. Thank you for making this split of the PCS possible. And I also want to give a shout out to our broadcast partners, Carry Live, Garena, and Riot Games. All right, Nightstar. Are you ready to rock and roll and see which iteration of J-Team will reign supreme?
Dude, this is so exciting because when we came into the split, we ranked, it was the 3 J-Team Multiverses. How would they do going toe-to-toe with PSG? And what do you know? The Final Four ends up being all 3 J-Teams and PSG. It doesn't get better than that. So coming into this matchup, very, very excited to see who comes out on top. I think a lot of our predictions coming into playoffs was that, well, PSG will be the final boss, and then it's just a matter of which of these 3 J teams will come out of that scuffle. But as of this moment, it's CFO already establishing themselves in the finals.
Yeah, things have definitely not gone as expected. I think just about everyone of us casters in multiple languages have said, oh yeah, we expected PSG to be on the top because that's what history says, but it is a new day in the PCS. PSG last night falling in a 3-1 series to CTBC Flying Oyster, who now take a spot in the finals. PSG, of course, do drop down, as it is a double elimination bracket, into the lower bracket finals, which is what these two teams tonight are playing for. Deep Cross Gaming and J-Team in a rematch of the first game of the split that really set the tone, I think, for how things were going to go. We may not have known it back then, Nightstar, but we are getting into it now. And man, it is going to be exciting to see who our Spring Split champion is and who goes on to represent the PCS at MSI this year. Deep Cross, J-Team, they both have shown strengths and weaknesses in this postseason. I want to say Deep Cross definitely on a bit more of a momentum uptick, but J-Team did take down the raid boss of Beyond Gaming, so I think they both have a lot to show for themselves in this matchup.
Yeah, and it was a very grueling series for J-Team against Beyond Gaming, but I think in that series, J-Team learned a lot about themselves, and I'm really keen to see how they take some of those lessons that they got from that Beyond Gaming series and transition it into this DCG series, because while Beyond Gaming and DCG are very different teams, I think the lessons that they got from that series can still transition over to this particular series.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And, having a little bit more of a longer ride, sometimes you get a bit more of that experience, a little bit more time to try and settle into your style. But adapting for a style is very difficult to do against the side of Deep Cross Gaming because these guys play all over the place, and that is a good thing. This is their starting lineup for tonight. Leaky in the top side, Hana in the jungle, Nesty in mid, Kriskata and Woody rounding out that bottom lane. Now, this is a team that certainly pulls in two different directions. They like to play through the top. They like to play through the bottom. Nesty is perhaps the most supportive mid laner in League of Legends. He lives to help other people out. He's the big quintessential roamer, a very different type of mid lane player.
Yeah, absolutely. His play style has been to, for the most part, focus on top side of the map. Yes, there's been a couple times where he does allocate time and resources into Kriskata, and you can certainly see Kriskata excel sometimes in those moments, but the majority of the time, this is a very top-heavy squad, which makes this matchup even more intriguing because on the flip side, for J-Team, when we talk about J-Team, it's about this mid-jungle, and then they tend to play a lot towards bot side.
Yeah, it is a little different how Gravity tends to shift there. Coming into the split, I think Kongye and Uniboy were perhaps the most hyped mid-jungle duo in the entire league, and I think that's what made their initial opener loss so surprising to Deep Cross Gaming. But they're, of course, joined by driver Lil V and Enzo. And it is going to be an interesting bout between these two teams because they do vary so much in style, especially in that mid lane. Uniboy, he is the one who's going to try and be the quintessential carry, has a number of pocket picks that are almost must bans. His Zoe was an absolute terror in the regular split. He's, of course, picked up Ahri along with a number, and let's be honest, most of our mid laners here in the PCS, but he's got, I think, a few more surprises to show. He's definitely had a lot of strengths. On the other side of the Rift, Driver has had a few ups and downs himself in the playoffs. I think Lil V and Enzo have also had a few struggles, but they are a very experienced duo, in particular Lil V. Enzo, I mean, it's sometimes easy to forget that this guy was a jungler 2 splits ago.
Yeah, it is very easy to forget that Enzo started out jungler for Berjaya Dragons, then shifted into the support role so they could bring on Arashi, who we still also have in the PCS. So very fortunate to still retain these players, but yeah, I would agree that it is a little bit, easy to forget that he did make that transition, and as a result, his pool might be a little bit smaller than a lot of some of these other players in that support role. But our highlighted matchup, Cascada, Lil V, the AD carries, they bring in a lot of damage for their teams. You would say Cascada, percentage-wise, a little bit more because of the fact that Nesty tends to contribute a lot less than your typical mid laner.
Yeah, that's for sure. Those numbers, the damage percentage he usually rocks is a little more inflated, but he does put out a lot of big numbers. And Cascada is such an incredible rookie, even though he has had a little bit of a rougher ride in the playoffs. He's been absolutely popping off, and if it wasn't for the sudden, absolute earth-shaking arrival of Shun, I think he still looks like potentially rookie of the split, but he's going up against a very experienced player in Lil V, a mainstay of the PCS. Now, 23 years old versus the 19-year-old Cascada, so it is certainly going to be a more veteran presence in the bottom side up against the rookie hotshot. But we are into picks and bans for game number 1, Nightstar. And no surprises to see Syndra banned out against Uniboy. The Ahri ban on red side seems to be the trend of late, as both these mid laners have picked it up.
Yep, Ahri is certainly going to be a I would assume 100% pick ban in this series, unless if there's a lot of things that change. But with the early ban onto that champion coming out, we already have 3 mid bans, right? We have the Syndra, we have the LeBlanc, we also have the Ahri. Now it's just a matter of, do we add a 4th from the side of J-Team? The Galio indeed does come out, another pick that we expect to see a lot of focus on. And then the final one is the Aphelios. I talked of when you and me were prepping for this series earlier. This Aphelios pick has been key for both of these AD carries, because when you roam the support up for the Rift Herald play, both of these teams like to leave their AD carry down in that bot lane, and a lot of our AD carries will very willingly just go for the 1v1 straight up, and Aphelios is probably the best at that.
More consistent for sure. We've talked about the Jinx Aphelios handshake. There's a lot more pop-off potential in the Jinx, but the Aphelios can get it done a lot more consistently. Nesty on a roaming champion, check the box. No surprises there. On the J-Team side, they do opt to take another champion that has been extremely prioritized in our league. It is going to be the Nautilus. And of course, Konge gets his chance to play the Lee Sin. But this is a hover that I'm always excited about when Woody is involved, because Renata Glask has had some mixed success, but Woody has been the one more often than not leading the charge. 4 out of 5 games on this champion. He's found a win, but he locks it in again, looking for another. J-Team instantly answer with the Jinx. I do love the counter engage, potential roam that Woody can get out of this, but we're into pick ban phase 2. Nightstar, it's going to be jungle targets.
Yeah, J-Team banning away the Volibear. Volibear has skyrocketed in value in our playoffs, and for good reason, because of the fact he brings so much early game potential. He also is extremely powerful in the mid game, just as a pseudo tank, and even towards the late game, if he gets snowballed during that early mid game portions, he is a really annoying, real big bruiser coming in from the jungle role that's very difficult to take down as the AD carry. But it will also be that Renekton band away coming in from J Team. A little bit surprising here because while we did see a decent chunk of it in the CFO series, for the most part, Renekton hasn't been very prominent in our league.
Yeah, oh, okay. So many bans thrown at Uniboy, but the mid Kaisa is still a possibility. He's played it once already. He's going to go for a little bit more safety, a little bit more sitting on his own back line, and that is going to be the Victor lock-in for him. Still a lot of damage. It does seem like J-Team are going mostly for late. Of course, Kongye trying to bridge that gap with an early game heavy presence. Jungler like Lee Sin is most played in this split. Very much right up his alley. But how do Deep Cross answer? Are we going to be looking for the blind leaky pick here? There's still jungle to go.
Looks like it could just be that Gnar pickup, which we've seen a lot of when it comes to blind pick top laners. And now for J Team, we could see some sort of big tank come out from Driver, because you look at your composition already. You have a Jinx, you have a Victor, you have a lot of space control and a lot of fallback sort of potential. Now, as long as you get a really big hyperscaling tank, I feel like it's so hard to get past that hyper tank to get access into the backline to your Jinx, to your Victor. So I think the Ornn makes sense. The Malphite can potentially have value, but
they swerve.
Yeah, the gameplay may not be a hyper scaling tank, but the amount of space control offered by this pick is still incredibly powerful.
Okay, so with the pivot there, Nightstar, J-Team's composition, it does have a lot of damage. It does seem like its front line is a little bit fragile, though. What are they going to look to do here up against the likes of Deep Cross?
Yeah, we saw a little bit of this coming in from the CFO series, right? Yesterday, where CFO, they would pick these scaling champions and then just really focus around playing around the Victor gravity field. So I think that's going to be a key cooldown to keep track of in these fights, because other than that, they don't have a lot of ways to create a lot of space except with your big ticket ultimates, right? Your Victor ult can create some space, your Gangplank ult can create some space, but we can clearly see there's a big gap in the scaling, because on one hand we have Gangplank, Victor, Jinx. On the other side, we've got Rise, who we know on 3 items can be a terror, but after that drops off a cliff. And then we also have Gnar, not exactly the greatest late game scaling champion. So I really like this J-Team draft. It's just a matter of how they're able to execute during the early game to get to that late game status.
Yeah, we'll see if the likes of Deep Cross Gaming can hold them off, or if it will be a J-Team success story in game number 1 here. Remember, this series, we will see the winner heading into the lower bracket finals for a shot at the grand finals. They'll have to clear through PSG Talon to do it, but in this series, it is winner go home. There is no more elimination after the double. So, kicking things off, Deep Cross going for a 4-man grouping here, as they have Hana actually hovering topside, but he should be coming back. Let's talk a little bit about the win conditions that Deep Cross are going to be trying to give for themselves, because they do seem to have a smattering of things that sit squarely in their comfort zone.
Yeah, and for the most part, they do have a lot of shoving lanes, right? You have a Gnar with that extra range advantage in the Boomerang. It can help him get lane priority. You also have the Rise in the mid lane. Of course, we know what he can do. And against a Victor who doesn't get that extra wave clear early on, he should be able to get mid lane priority pretty readily. And then in that bottom lane, you have a range support up against the melee support, so you should also get lane priority. So it's about being able to invade and slow down Kongria, prevent him from ganking. That, I think, is going to be the main win condition for DCG. And then with all these shoving lanes, just try and pretty much go full court press, as we would say in basketball.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. The only concern that I would have about that, right, is that Hana's not really been the fastest jungler. He's played a lot of champions like this Hecarim because he gets into the 5v5s. He gets to play for the team fights a little bit more. But Kongye works a lot faster than he does, so I feel like he's going to need to pick up the pace if he wants to try and shut him down, or he's going to be relying on his team to roam early, which they do quite a bit of.
Yeah, and J Team, I do think that overall, this draft just offers them a lot of potential. Driver also hitting level 2. He can just kind
Ooh.
of walk in onto Leaky, dumping so
Nice barrel
much
chain.
damage. Yeah,
That's
that was
pre-Narbar.
yeah, that was so smooth. And we're seeing the blind pick get punished.
Yeah, Woody takes a dredge line out of Enzo. They just trade a little bit of damage. Lilvi is forced to tank a bit too, but that level 2 early pop for J-Team's bot lane does give them a little timing window. And you're absolutely right, Nightstar. It is looking like the pressure's kind of turning around just a little bit there. Curious, that top lane is always going to be one to watch, especially the GP versus Gnar. But when you're talking about J-Team, you got to keep your eyes on Konge and where he is going to go. You mentioned hyperscaling. He's pretty much the one champion on that team that really won't. I mean, I guess you don't really count the supports. But where does he focus his attention? What does he get done? Because right now, it's pretty even on the jungle farm. The pathing both teams should pretty much know where each other's going to be. But Konge can get involved early, and he tends to like to help Uniboy out. But unless you want to counter gank, I don't know if you necessarily need to be there.
Yep.
As Hana is here in this mid lane, and Uniboy a little low on mana. Hana's going to get spotted upriver, though.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the rare instances where if you're J-Team, you're not going to play through Uniboy in this game. Okay, nice hook.
Catch.
Good
Yeah,
damage.
Woody taken very low there. Good Riptide. They do get the root back on. Criscata doing everything he can to try and return fire. That is both ignites expended by the supports on the bottom side, but inconclusive. No first bloods just yet. And as we expected, it's a very spicy 2v2 in this bottom lane to kick things off.
Yeah, and I also think for J-Team, like, their focal point should be down in this bottom lane because of the fact that you have the CC offered by Nautilus. It's really hard to find ganks in a lot of these other lanes, except if DCG laners do overshove and put themselves in a poor lane state. Certainly, in those instances, you could see a gank come through, but I think it's about, if you're going to gank a lane, it's about this bottom lane. And then otherwise, you're looking to make sure your GP doesn't get dove on.
For sure. Right now, they haven't really had to worry about that. And in fact, Driver has built up a little bit of a CS lead, although I think it's just close enough to probably tango back and forth for a little bit. That Sheen buy on the first back here, as we'll take a look at how the player levels are shaking out in this early game. Been relatively quiet with a small CS advantage just about for J-Team. And you can see Lilvi is pulling ahead of Criscata, the veteran trumping the rookie in this early game. Does have the composition, does have the 2v2 for it. And with the Nautilus priority, you know, this is something that we talked about in the pregame before we were getting ready for today. I know you mentioned that Nautilus is a pretty big pick, not just because of its inherent popularity and its ability to set up these plays, but because Lilvi had a hard time stopping the face tanks and stopping the dredge lines into him. So the solution has just been, we're just going to first rotation it.
Yeah, this Nautilus pick is going to be pretty important in the series as well. It feels like a lot of these picks, if left through, will just get snapped up, right? Like a lot of the bans we saw in the first phase. And then this Nautilus pick, just because of the fact that Lil V, he's shown, depending on day, he's going to be extremely streaky when it comes to dealing with avoiding these hooks. So game number 1, they're starting on a good foot in the fact that, well, he doesn't have to deal with the Nautilus.
Okay, Konge is backing in Tribrush, but he has stopped it. Looks like they want to try and bait an overextension here from Criscata and Woody. It's been a very quiet early game. 6 minutes, no first blood. Okay, there's going to be the root down, and into the Flame Choppers. Woody just barely dodges it, and oh, Konge, he smelled the blood, but it wasn't close enough for him to capitalize on.
Yeah, Lil V takes a large chunk of damage, and it's because of the fact that they wanted to bait that fight, right? If you get grabbed by the handshake, that might prompt DCG to start unloading and put themselves in a spot where you can collapse. But again, Enzo, he has to be the real big starter for that fight, being able to land the hook. And now it looks like DCG, they're going to bring multiple members. They have the mid jungle rotating over, but it won't be a dive on bot lane, but rather it's going to be a turn for this blue buff, which is a good deny from the Victor because it does limit his ability to control that mid lane.
Yeah, and it's taking away one of Kongye's camps. As you mentioned, this was one of the strategies. They wanted to try and delay the Lee Sin as best they could. Hana does actually get 6 before his opposite number, so far it's working out okay for Deep Cross. They haven't really lost anything in this game. Sure, Leaky got a little zoned away, but they're able to use the extra presence that they have down bot to start off on this Infernal. Able to take that one without any contest right now as they claim number 1. There'll be an Ocean Dragon on the Rift number 2.
Yeah, and as of now, there's not a whole lot happening on the Rift. J-Team, of course, pretty happy to scale up with this composition. And for the side of DCG, we know when Hana is on more of these team fighting champions, he does take a long time to actually get involved onto the map. He does like the full clear more often than not. And in this instance, it sort of works out because he is up against a Lee Sin. So in the isolated matchup, Lee Sin needs to have more done in order to get more value out of the pick. But you might see a pick-off coming in from J-Team. It does look like they will exit the bush. I mean, it is a level 6 with red-white on Affilio, so it's incredibly dangerous to just go for that fight. Because if you don't burst out the Affilios and one-shot him, which they weren't level 6, so they didn't have the Jinx ultimate to follow up with the Nautilus ult, then he just turns things around with either the Severum burst heal or the Crescendum infinite amount of damage.
So right now, what Deep Cross are able to do is, as the Jinx Rocket comes in, okay, yeah, Hana, I think he saw that one coming. He backs away so that the AoE doesn't hit it. They've gotten objectives on both sides of the map relatively uncontested, and I think this is what you were talking about in the pick ban as far as win conditions go. Pushing lanes. They're not necessarily winning the lanes, but they are pushing them out, which does make it a little bit hard for J-Team to try and contest a little. And now J-Team is looking to push deep in enemy territory. Take a look at Enzo right now on a warding spree. He's going to bring Kongye in as well to try and counter jungle on the Raptor camp. So this is that timing window, but we might be setting up for a dive, though.
Yeah, and this is such a smart play coming in from J-Team. They know that they can't contest for the Rift Herald, so what do? They get such nice layered deep vision in this bottom side of the map. So now wherever Hana does go, unless it's straight through lane coming in bot, they will have vision of him. So I love this adaptation coming in from J-Team, knowing that they can't challenge that Rift Herald. And they don't really need to either, because they have that 500 gold lead. That's more than the 320 that you would get from the 2 plates that you would be snagging with Rift Herald. It's just a matter of, can DCG also get first tower with this?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Is they do have the scaling team, but they also have an opportunity to try and make a play. Ooh, Leaky, speaking of, tried to make the play himself, didn't quite find the Nar shove. Driver was relatively safe there. It has been a quiet topside, but we'll see if that changes a little bit here. Hana doing Krugs directly on the ward, so that vision investment already paying off here as they do spy him. But there's nobody at home, so he wants a lane gank, but he's kind of just wasting time. He doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, they're going to be able to get it back, and now, I mean, the wave is slowly shoving in, but you already see the defensive setup coming in to make sure they don't get dove on this play with Lil V walking up to farm, because Kongye is there.
Cascada is in a dangerous position right now. If he gets a hook, they're going to try to make this happen, but it will be a 3v3 unbeknownst to either side. There we go. Now they see Hana. They know he's still here.
Yep. 3v3, but remember, Realm Warp can sort of cheat a little bit here, so Nesty should be able to arrive on the scene just a little bit faster, but Uniboy will contribute a little bit more damage at the very least. As things stand, though, it's still not a whole lot done.
That's a slow game.
Yeah, pretty slow, pretty steady, which, you know, sometimes we kind of expect it from a game one, more often than not, because both teams trying to feel each other out. They don't want to take that big of a risk. Usually that's when that's for game 2, right? Where you already have the win, or you need to take some risks to get back in.
They're going to try it now. That's a teleport to try and match the pressure,
here.
but yeah, J-Team, they get the investment to try and counteract. So as you correctly said, Nightstar, really that Herald doesn't result in much more than the 2 plates already popped down. Victor able to secure up his blue without too much trouble. Deep Cross really wanted that dive, but it felt like it was really telegraphed, and J-Team knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to use this priority to cash in onto a second dragon, which J-Team, they'll go ahead, let go of. They know that, hey, right now, DCG are pretty darn strong. And we'll just go ahead, let that go, because we know at 2 items, that's where we can start shifting the tides, itemization-wise. And Korea, he'll go ahead, steal away a couple of camps. So at this point, like DCG, this is where you need to start accelerating the game, where you look for these skirmishes to try and pick people off, because you know J-Team, they're definitely a ticking time bomb with this composition.
Oh yeah, starting to feel the pressure a little bit here. Be a little dangerous. Leaky thought about making a 1v1 play, but Kongye was around. Meanwhile, back into the bottom lane, no, nothing's happening there, as it looked like it for a second, but Woody is able to disengage, respecting the return fire potential out of the Renowned Glass. It's the reason Woody's had a lot of success on this one. Mythic starting to get completed, though. A little bit faster on the side of J-Team. Lil V with Kraken Slayer. We saw about a minute ago, Driver got his Trinity Force, and just about everybody's starting to pick him up, but you can see there's a small window. Deep Cross just a little bit behind J-Team, and I think they're not feeling quite as confident in their ability to press the go button just yet.
Yeah, Hana, though, is pretty advanced forward, and I think Lil V's dead.
There we go. Yeah, not a lot of chance for him to go anywhere.
Get the
just
plate.
Trying to get a little tower damage. Has the plate. Moral victory. They do get first blood. It's a 14-minute. That might be one of the latest first bloods we've seen this split. A very uncharacteristically slow start, but it is game 1 of a series.
Yeah, and more importantly, the first blood gold does go onto the Philia, so it will shore up some of the CS difference. And I'm not sure if he got any of the plates when they threw down that Rift Herald early on, just because it was a 4v4, very hard to walk up to get that gold split between you and the jungler. So when there's also 4 people, you know, more likely if you're approaching the turret, everyone else is as well, so you probably wouldn't get much value out of it regardless. But it will be first brick gold, and that will be DCG holding an ever so slight gold advantage. But just going back to itemization, I like the fact that we have J-Team going for the Leandries and the Kraken Slayer, because you know there's a lot of bruisers on the side of DCG. There's going to be a lot of health coming in from this Hecarim, from the Mega Gnar, and also from this tank-oriented Rise build. So I like the adaptations item-wise.
Absolutely. The momentary advantage, though, does shift a little bit for J-Team as they get the opportunity to take their Herald. Still very even in gold despite the first blood. Well, about 300 difference for Deep Cross, but the Dragons do start to make up a bit. So you talked about accelerating the game state. That's what Deep Cross are trying to do right now. They've got 3 in the mid at the moment, but it is very difficult to push a wave against a Victor at any time in the game.
Yeah, and I think DCG, this second Herald is pretty important for them to try and accelerate the game, break that mid tower to then destabilize the map for J-Team. So J-Team, see if they take the play. It doesn't look like it. Knowing that Mega Gnar has popped for Leaky, they just go ahead, say, we're going to try and zone you off. Maybe we get some chip damage on this mid tower, and we'll go from there. Oh, Nesty! What?
Flash Nesty. Oh, and he goes in. That's going to be the hostile takeover. Buying a little time as Woody gets a little help from Enzo to get the kill, but the counter engage is real. Kongye flashes and smites down for the health. They can't quite delete him. What a chaotic fight. It only results in the death of Enzo, though. Now that's a surprise.
Yeah, but you look at how many health bars on the DCG side are actually pretty chunked, and that's why they're going to bring in a teleport. Woody takes another large chunk of damage, and yeah, Flash is really, really important for the side of DCG because of the fact that is a lot of their engage power, right? You need the Flash onto this Rise to get in range of champions on the side of J-Team. As we get to see the replay, you see him flash forward, and I mean, this was a great ultimate coming in from Woody. Really hard to find value with that Renata hostile takeover against the squad of J-Team, but they managed to do it in that instant. Unfortunately, though, aren't able to get more kills out of it.
Yeah, I think really Woody kind of saved that because you could see the Gangplank was doing so much work with his cannon barrage. I love how Cascada flashes in the bush, but he sees like, okay, I can get Konge, but Konge is flashed out, so he tries with the auto, he's out of range and just hits the turret instead. That's gonna be a bit of a tilter.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there, and I mean, Konge, he's just so slippery on this Lee Sin, and it's really forgiving for a playmaker like Konge to get the Lee Sin because he can go in, he can go out, a lot of freedom, and now Mega Gnar popped.
This is a little dangerous. Not a lot of flashes on the side of Deep Cross. Ooh, they dodged the Nautilus Hook, and Leaky doing a great job zoning, but will they be able to survive the ensuing fight as they've gotten the Dragon? I think they might leave their Gnar for dead. No, he flashes outside the pit. It's a full retreat spread here. For Deep Cross, the laser's going to do it. Uniboy gets one on a hostile takeover. It's not going to be enough for Woody to get bailed out this time. So J-Team go for the chase, and Deep Cross pay pretty dearly for that Dragon.
Yeah, they get themselves the third Dragon. However, J-Team, they find what they wanted, which are kills, and now they have priority in this bottom lane. They might be able to take down this tier 2, but as things stand, J-Team certainly starting to get online as Cannon Barrage does get dumped down, and Enzo will walk away.
Yeah, that was an interesting turn of events for sure. Even in kills and just about even in gold now, you can see that while J-Team were pushing bot, Cascada actually just free-fired down the mid. Let's take a look at this fight because this was a tense one, and it could have gone a lot worse for Deep Cross.
Yeah, a little bit disjointed on the play actually coming in from J-Team. We see the kick coming in from Konge right when the hook comes out from Enzo, and as a result, they don't actually get their hands onto Cascada. However, they are able to still finish off those two members of DCG, and a great cleanse coming in from Lil V to make sure he's able to secure that kill without doing a number on his team, because getting that hostile takeover landed onto you when you have Kraken Slayer as the Jinx, you are doing so much damage, and if that gets turned on to your own team with the AoE rockets, you might be getting a pentakill on your own squad.
Yeah, that's a downside of having those hyper carries too far ahead, I suppose. It is really an ultimate that we haven't really seen as much massive impact from because it's so situational. But yes, Woody has been one of our best players, if not our best player, on this Renata Glass. So it's something that J-Team have to take into their calculations in these fights. Very even game in the gold, but that Dragon stack is building, keeping in mind it's a Cloud Soul. The ability haste is certainly going to help out. Off the back of that fight, though, as we crest the 20-minute mark, we do see the Bloodthirster coming in for Cascada. He does have a little more sustain to work with. So they're going to try to make these fights last longer, but I don't know if that's going to matter. Uniboy just deletes Woody off the map. A nice combo with Enzo on the hook. Cascada had no chance to help him out.
Yeah, no flash on Woody means that when he's caught out like that, he is absolutely dead. And this time, Konge does line up with that hook on Enzo. So nice 1-2 punch there. Now J-Team, they'll be able to get this mid tower, but we'll see if Hana wants to try and engage. It looks like he's decided against it, as Leaky does have the teleport up, but it's like quite looking for the play. I think that they certainly decided against just pulling the trigger there. But J-Team definitely online now, and you can see a second item's completed here. While it's a little bit more defensive, you know, you have the extra range coming in from RFC. You also have the Zhonya's Hourglass. I think it's just great bridge items to make sure you get to your big power spike, which is that third item.
Oh, look at this, Uniboy. That was a fantastic party portal to just dive on top of Uniboy. Good split for Deep Cross.
Still good damage.
This might even open the opportunity to take the Baron. It's pretty early here as Konge, he wants to chase on, but the rest of the cavalry has arrived. And they could see that's the teleport. Cascada dodging out from the rocket. Driver is absolutely going nowhere right now. He's trying to drive back to his safety.
Hana's going.
Here goes the unstoppable onslaught. Lil V knocked back in, rooted for days. Woody getting the kill credit with Deep Cross. They just pull the old switcheroo on J-Team.
Yeah, in Deep Cross Gaming, they just understand their timing windows, how or when they can fight, and that was definitely an instance where they could look for the fight. Kongyun, though, lands the Q, could go in.
Does go in, does go out. That's
Driver's doing so much damage.
Situation. They took way too long. That's going to be another one off the back of Driver's ultimate.
It's
the Baron's still alive. J-Team, they're going to be able to get him in this one. Leaky going low. Woody forced to flash out. Nesty's Agnes, and they still do not have the smite. Who's going to get it in the end? This has gone absolutely pear-shaped. Nesty looking for more. The Baron is the raid boss. The Baron is the raid boss, Nightstar. 800 hit points.
They're just going to
J-Team gonna secure it. Just barely. Fail out for Nesty. Can't quite get the kills. What the heck did we just watch?
Oh my God, Pyro, what a fight. Holy moly. Everyone is just so low. It was the ultimate. It looked like it was going to become a yakety sax moment, but J-Team just pull out just the smallest edges there. DCG, they make a great call to look for that Baron, but then J-Team do such a great job with the 3v5, and Driver is absolutely ginormous now. He is 4-0-2. He gets a triple kill in that last fight. He has completed Collector now, and I know Collector might not be a fan favorite when it comes to itemization, but when you have that armor penetration already coming in, that was a lot of work. As we see Lil V, he gets caught out, and when that pick came in, I thought it was just done, dusted. This is going to be Baron. It's up to Kongyun to make a hero steal, but J-Team, they understand this gangplank is so big, and they can't do anything against the Cannon Barrage. This Cannon Barrage is doing so much work. Cruscata, he can't walk into the pit to play with his team, so they're just playing split. Now, Teleport comes in from Uniboy because he got picked off a long time ago to start out this way, and now he's respawned. He can rejoin. He has, of course, a lot of damage with that Leandries, and he's just pumping it out, and now it's just... This was where things got really crazy because no smites on both sides. We're trying to secure Baron, but we also are trying to find the fight. And nice hook there. I mean, gotta admire Nesty trying to find the steal, but you know,
it was so close.
Yeah.
That was almost the legendary double Baron throw. But we gotta talk about this one as the big setup comes through. Cruscata's off the map. Hana comes in, but it is a little bit too late now as they go back to collapse for the turnaround. Leaky on the front, about to run out of the Meganar. Kongye goes in, Kongye goes back. Woody, Leaky, both low. They lose Enzo in the engage, but the trade for Cruscata is so much more worth for J-Team as they still have 4 members healthy with Baron. In the face of the Dragon stack, J-Team completely deny the Baron. They deny the Drake. They open the base first, and it is J-Team at 25 minutes that have cracked into Deep Cross's base.
Yeah, and for the side of Deep Cross, it doesn't matter if J-Team lose their main engage, if you lose your main damage source, which is Cruscata on this Aphelios. There's just no damage afterwards. Yes, the Triforce and R can do a little bit of work, but you have a tank Rise. So if the side of J-Team, they just go ahead and armor stack. They're not taking a whole lot of damage after Cruscata dies. So nice hook there, beautiful hook. And yes, he does get the bailout casted onto him, but he isn't able to get the assist to actually stay alive. And then, without any damage,
staying alive.
Okay, great pick coming in our smaller screen there. Lil V getting the kill onto Hana. That's also big because that's jungler down. Actually, not going to be that impactful, actually.
But they can still push the top side. I mean, this is Nightstar. Things are starting to look a little bad for Deep Cross. Yeah, right now they're building up that gold lead. You can find them getting the picks. I mean, all of this was allowed by Driver just getting so fed. You talked about the Collector. Yes, it's not the sexiest item in League of Legends. We're aware of that, but it's still very important. It's still very impactful. And at this point, Driver is in a pop-off state. So as long as Uniboy and Lil V just put out consistent damage, it's so hard to engage into this comp. You saw Hana a little slower. When we talk about Hana being a slower jungler, that's what we mean. It's not that he's necessarily just, like, falling behind. It's that his engages just don't come as fast. And Criscata got completely destroyed in that bottom engage because he just didn't have the opportunity to get out of harm's way. The moment the hook lands on him from Enzo, he's just caught in the center of the cannon barrage. Driver's just looking to drop cannonballs on him for days, and that bailout was never going to last.
Yeah, and now here's another drawback of Nestie's build, right? Because he wants to go for that Frozen Heart, knowing that there's a lot of AD damage threats. But as we learned in yesterday's series with PSG and CFO, if you go for that Frozen Heart, because of the control mages coming out on the other side, this Victor will just absolutely shred you. So if you're able to pick off this Victor, maybe you stand a chance in the fight, but otherwise there's no way to navigate around again the GP ultimate and also the grab field coming in from Victor. The amount of space control offered here, you need to be able to find that realm warp into the back line with pretty much all your main engage with the Gnar, with the Rise, and also this Hecarim. Otherwise it's just way too hard to get backline access.
Yeah, they need a pick, to be honest. It seems like it's going to be harder and harder to find as J-Team have just moved his 5. And yeah, the other issue on that Victor is even if you catch him, he's got the Zhonya's, right? So in the few seconds he's going to be in stasis, you got the GP dropping ultimates. You've got a 3-item Jinx now that the LDR is completed. So this just gets bad to worse. And Deep Cross, I feel like you might want to just sack this dragon right now because they're just watching it go. They would need a miracle of a pullback. Now here they go for the engage. Leaky gets pulled in. No Mega Gnar just yet. Here comes the ultimate out of Hana and into the hostile takeover. Do they have the damage they need? Enzo is going to go golden here, and that is a big ultimate down for Driver as he tries to cut them off, but it's just enough to take down the dragon. Gnar against the wall. They do find Enzo, but will it be enough? Kongye with the insect on a Criscata is going to deny the damage coming out of Deep Cross Gaming here, and Nesty has nowhere to go. The cleanup crew is coming in. The zap is dodged, but Hana, I don't think he can run forever. And that's going to be a big win for J-Team marching down the mid lane.
Yeah, and Hana holds on to his life along with Nesty, but they are running in the opposite direction of their Nexus. So they will go ahead, get those recalls off, but we can clearly see J-Team's composition is just online. DCG, they took their time trying to find these pigs, playing around objectives, and yes, they were able to get a lot of objectives in their favor with the Rift Herald, with these dragons, but they weren't able to find the killing blow, and that was the Baron. Now J-Team, with this second Baron, they can really put a nail in the coffin for game number 1. Hana locked out of the pit. Uniboy might get caught out though. Yeah,
Kongye and Uniboy could be. That's going to be the kickback, but Hecarim goes in with the charge, but the rest of the cavalry arrives once again. Hana goes into stasis for a second, dodges out the Jinx rocket. Doesn't matter, gets yoinked back in to another one as Lil V picks up the kill. A valiant effort completely stymied here as J-Team have taken full control. Let's take a look at this fight one more time.
Yeah, we take a look at this fight. The hook lands onto Leaky. The engage comes in from Hana. Honestly, this is probably the best engage you could look for because you're able to chain the Hecarim Fear into the hostile takeover. So it was as good as it gets, but there's just no damage. Criscata, he can't walk forward to deal damage because of the space control offered by the GP ultimate, by that Victor grab field. And because you're not doing damage in those moments of CC, you're overly reliant on Lil V killing his own team. And that didn't happen because he was the one member that did dodge out on that hostile takeover.
You can see that J-Team really respecting that distance, and they know that they can actually just get the outplay.
Oh, that's
Leaky
a big whiff.
Completely whiffs the Gnar. Uniboy just breathes deep in that hostile takeover as he goes into stasis, and with those key ultimates burned, it's going to be all J-Team here as they take down the inhibitor in the bottom side, looking to push this one in for the win in game 1 here. J-Team looking incredibly strong, just using the windows they have, using the engage tools they have, and just not allowing Deep Cross to get back into this. A massive Chaos Storm sends Woody back to the fountain. And you can see Hana, even though he goes on the ultimate, he knows this one is over with a sad B going through. Nesty trying to save the day. This might be the opportunity to save. No Nexus turrets, but here's the counter engage. Hana going through, just deleted. The pony is going for a fast route to the fountain as Leaky goes in for the second win, but Deep Cross pushed too hard, pushed too deep, and they will lose in game 1 here. It took a little longer than J-Team would have liked, but as Criscata is trying to hold the game, they're just going to pad these stats out. Lil V's unstoppable. GG, lights out. Game 1 to J-Team.
And DCG in game number 1, they took a bit of a slow approach here, but with the vast compositional scaling difference coming in from the side of J-Team, they were easily able to strike back once those 2 items came online. Because they went for the defensive route, they were able to mitigate the big 2-item power spike coming in from the side of DCG, and once it got to that 3rd item, it was just lights out.
Yeah, I felt like it came down to who could stiff arm the other team more effectively. And J-Team, they just didn't let Deep Cross get enough of an inroad in the early game. The most that they were able to get was like a blue buff steal and a couple of plates. As you mentioned, they kind of traded that back with the CS differential. And even though, you know, there was like one mistake from Lil V overextending in bot into Hana, it didn't matter. They couldn't find enough advantages. The dragon stacking wasn't fast enough, and J-Team were able to deny. So for right now, in this battle of the J-Team multiverse, the original, the classic, the name brand wins the day for game 1.
Yeah, the knockoff not quite doing enough there to bring down J-Team, but
well, that's savage, Nightstar. Knockoff. Oof.
Exactly. But it is a 5-game
there.
series. It is a 5-game series. There's time to adapt, and we know DCG, they're more of the cerebral squad, so I think in a best of 5, that's where they're going to be able to show their best team colors. So while this is a great start for J-Team, and I expect them to take a more CFO approach where we're just gonna pick scaling lanes, but because we're better laners as well for the most part, we're not gonna fall into those big 3-4K gold gaps where all of a sudden that early game composition could snowball onto us. So I think CFO and J-Team in particular understand what they can do with their set of players, and it's really up to DCG to attack a lot harder than they were able to in this particular game.
Yeah, what would you change up in this draft? Because I'm looking at it and I feel like a lot of it was the comfort for what Deep Cross liked to try and do in general, but they didn't have enough damage. I mean, do you think they maybe opt to try and go for the Jinx instead of the Aphelios because of the reset potential? Do you maybe put Hana on something like the Viego that they toyed with in Pick Ban? Or do you think the comp wasn't the issue?
I mean, this is pretty much comfort all around for DCG, right? You get the Aphelios because if you're rotating your 4-man squad up towards that Herald, you still want to be able to have that 1v1, which has been kind of the standard here in the PCS. But the one big pick I would say is that Gnar. You just can't blind pick Gnar at this time. There's too many picks that you can pick against it. And just the fact, again, like you're playing mid lane Rise, you're playing tank Rise, you need other sources of damage. Gnar doesn't bring enough of that. So I would have preferred, again, the Gwen in our league has all but vanished for some reason, but this is still a big damage dealer that contributes magic damage, shores up the deficit that you're having from your tank Rise, that could remedy the situation and can also dive.
Yeah, and they could have gone for something like a Jace, right? If they wanted to try and get a little bit more poke, a little bit more side lane. There are other options, even with like a Tryndamere band away. So I do think a bit of a swing and a miss from Deep Cross on that aspect of the draft. The other question I want to ask you, Nightstar, while we're waiting to get the stats up, is like what are we going to see in the draft bans change? Because so many were thrown the way of Uniboy, and he's like, that's fine, I got Victor.
Yeah.
So is it even worth it?
We can see in the damage charts, like, Uniboy on Victor just absolutely bodied the side of DCG. And, I mean, really all the carries on J-Team, right? They were just outputting so much damage. And when it comes to trying to deal with Uniboy's champion pool, you probably look to drop the Zoe pick, perhaps. But but you need to find some sort of solution in that regard. Maybe DCGs, I would assume, still stay on the blue side, just because then you're not forced into a situation where you go ahead ban the Zeri. But MVP will be Enzo on this Nautilus pick. Maybe they try and deny the Nautilus pick here. That could be one of those big options as well. It just feels like if you first pick Nautilus, though, it feels really bad because you're investing a lot of draft resource into a support.
But it worked. I mean, hey, Enzo, we talked about how he had role swapped only a couple of splits ago, but certainly proved himself on these engage-heavy champions. He certainly prefers this style of meta, and despite Woody being on a very tricky champion to navigate in the form of the Renata, he still got a lot more value out of his hooks, really making him stretch, and we see why this is such a valued pick in the support role. We don't often see the supports get the MVP, so I think props to Enzo for really stepping it up this game and setting his AD carry up for success.
Yeah, and I also like how J-Team adapted their draft to play against the Renata Glask, right? Because this Renata came in the first phase. We have to remember that. So, and in response from the side of J-Team, what do they have? They've drafted a lot of range. They have the Victor, they have the Jinx, and then they add in a Gangplank. So even if you land the hostile takeover, you just can't get on top of those CC targets. So I love the draft adaptations coming in from J-Team more so. And for the side of DCG, yeah, we need to start considering why we're picking Renata Glask and how to play around this champion, because I think this is a very powerful champion. You just can't really funnel yourself into a very narrow choke point in the draft phase when you take her that early.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a risk for them, and Deep Cross are going to have to find some answers, but we'll find out if they do right on the other side of this break.